only take about 10 minutes, and then I'll have people ask questions if anyone has any questions. As I say, this is an informal meeting. We don't need a secretary. We don't need a second or motions or Robert's rules. Robert will not make an appearance this morning. All right. As I said a moment ago, the purpose of this brief meeting is just to let you all know what the plan is as we look to our next hires with Stephen Brooks' departure, Elise North as well. My children. Get. All right. At the session's December meeting, a plan was proposed and approved by which our goal is going to be in the near future to hire 2 pastors. Okay? The first hire will be a pastor that will oversee ministry to families. So families, parents, students, children. This pastor will have other responsibilities, but that will be the primary area of responsibility, much like Stephen Brooks' job description. Now, important note, because this role is especially going to focus on students and children, parents and students between 6th grade to 12th grade are invited to a meeting this Wednesday in the youth room at church. That'll be this Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m., and the purpose is to hear from you. We want to know, what would you like the hiring committee to look for as we seek to identify this next hire? We won't turn anybody away, so if anybody wants to be there but you don't have a student or child, that's fine. You're welcome to come, but it's primarily designed for them because that will be the main area of responsibility. So that's this Wednesday, the 10th, from 6 to 8 p.m. in the youth room. Now, the second so the goal is to first hire that person, form a hiring committee, and then the next hire after that will be something like an executive type pastor, someone who's either ordained, like Pastor Stephen and I as a teaching elder, or someone who is a lay person but who would be installed and ordained as a ruling elder. Okay. But that will be the focus, ministry operations. Our church is at a place, I've gathered this, and the session we've gathered this, that it's especially coming from the other staff, that we're really in a place where we need to put some administrative and operational structures into place if our church is going to be effective in the long run. Thankfully, we do see life change happening in our church. We see people coming to faith. We see people growing in their faith. And to use a trellis and vine metaphor, the vine, that is life change, is happening, but we need to build up our trellis a little bit so that we have some systems and structures in place for that. So the session is currently creating job descriptions for these positions. On a little bit of a technical BCO note, but this is actually important that you understand this, an assistant pastor is hired by the session. An associate pastor, like Stephen Brooks' position, is hired by the congregation. Okay, so the goal is for the family pastor to go for 1 to 2 years in an assistant role. So the initial call would be from the session. And then with the view to, after a year or two of ministry, it being up to the congregation whether or not this person then becomes an associate pastor. Think like this person is permanently here. What we don't want to do is right out of the gate hire an associate, because it happens at times that there's a hire and you just realize this wasn't a good hire. This person is not a good fit for our church. So understand that we're hiring an assistant, but with the view to them becoming an associate within about a 2-year time frame. So that is our plan of action. However, because we're doing this first hire with a view to you, the congregation, approving of him as an associate, we want you to be involved in the hiring. Does that make sense? Everybody follow me? So what we're going to do is we're going to put together a pastoral search committee for this position. 1 month from today, or 4 weeks from today, on February 4th, we will have a congregational meeting at which time you will get to vote for people who serve on the pastoral search committee. So please be in prayer for that. the composition of this search committee will be as follows. There will be 2 elders from the church who will be on that committee, 1 deacon, and then one male from the congregation at large, and then 1 male alternate from the congregation at large. And then we will have 3 female members and 1 female alternate who will be on the search committee. And then lastly, we're going to invite, we'll have basically Stephanie Atkinson and the other folks who volunteer with the student ministry. We'll select 3 students who we want to not be voting, but to have a voice on that search committee. So we'll look for 3 students from ages 8th grade to 12th grade to be advisors to the committee as well. So action points are as follows. Starting this week, probably tomorrow or the next day, go to our website, and that's where you can find an online form so that you can submit nominations to be on the pastoral search committee. If you prefer to, email one or send us, write on a piece of paper a nomination, that's fine. You can give that to me or get in touch with the office. So we need your nominations for the pastor search committee, and then the actual voting will take place on February 4th. And then once this first hire is identified and installed, we'll then regroup and focus on hiring a more administratively oriented pastor. If any of you know me at all, you know that administrative stuff is not my thing, and I know there's a lot of amens from other people on staff. And but at any rate, we'll do that next. But that will be an assistant pastor role. And then the search committee, once that is formed, will put together dates for congregational prayer. So I would ask you to do that individually. I'll pray in just a second once we're done with Q&A. But pray that God would lead us, would direct our church to the right person, and pray, frankly, for the current staff right now. Think about the load that is on all of the staff with Elise North, who did so much good for our church and carried a very heavy load. Think about all that Stephen Brooks did for our church. All of that has devolved onto the staff. And it's also devolved on many of you who are selflessly serving in a lot of the different ministries of the church. And frankly, some things have had to fall by the wayside. So I am thankful for you as a church that I've just not heard too much griping about well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? So I'm genuinely appreciative to each of you for your patience as we're going through a transition. So with that said, are there any questions? Oh, Brenda, shout it out real loud so people over there can hear. I would invite other elders who want to chime in on this. So the role is not necessarily one that would not necessarily have to be someone who's been to seminary, but it's possible that it could also be a ruling elder. I'll give you my answer. Actually, how about I'll open it up to other elders, and then I'll give you my reasoning. Okay. Any other elders who want to weigh in on that? The question is, why is it that the second hire, which would be someone who would focus more on operations and administration, what was the session's rationale? Why is it not possible for that to be a woman? Because it's someone who would either be a teaching elder or a ruling elder. I don't want to be the only one speaking. Elders? You want me to? Yeah. So this is not something I mentioned to the session, but I'll say my preference. This is somebody I'm going to be working very, very closely with. A lot of just one-on-one meetings, and I'm just more comfortable with that being a male. But I didn't voice that to the session. But anyway, that's my rationale. Mark, do you want to take a stab at it? Have you got another microphone for? Here, take that.
Yeah, we're still working through the job description, but I think we view once you see the job description, that it'll be more pastoral in nature. So it's there's an administrative component, but we believe that to be within the framework of the roles of a pastor. And what you would expect in a job description, for a pastor will be very similar on this one. So.
Yeah. Any follow-ups or other elders who want to weigh in? Okay, other questions? Yes, Dan. Let me bring this to you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, the position that Elise was in is a third position, correct?
Mhm.
That is still
Yes.
open. Okay.
It has not been. Elise's position has been pulled down from the website, and we're no longer hiring for that position. So the idea is some of that function would roll under the executive pastor as well. So yeah, there's not 3 positions open, but we would envision eventually there would be 2 filled positions.
Other questions? Oh, David Mustard has got one. You can wait for the mic or shout it out, whatever you want, David. Okay.
Can you just say a little bit more about what the timing is? So it will start on the 24th, and what's the timing on the first one? Do we have a goal on when that's supposed to be wrapped up? And then when would the second one start? Would that overlap, or would we wait till the first one's done?
Yes.
How's that going to work?
Yes, good question. The first priority is to hire the pastor for families. So that will start as soon as the pastoral search committee is put together. I would actually probably throw it back to you and say, you tell me about the timing of these things. My guess is that it's hard to imagine us hiring before summertime. That would be my suspicion. And then once that person is installed, then at that point we would start the search for another person. So the first hire is going to have to. I'm going to have to work in very close tandem with him to make sure the operations and different administrative functions are happening. So that would be kind of a shared work, and then both of us would be able to offload a lot of things to the other person. So does that answer your question?
So then once the first one's hired, then we would restart then we'd go through the same thing, same process that we're doing now, identify a search committee, elect representatives, and then hire, maybe starting in the fall then?
Right. We would start the search process in the fall if we're able to have that person identified and installed by the summertime. Any other elders want to weigh in on that? I'm trying to remember exactly how we spoke of it. It's more likely that would probably be a session hire as opposed to something where the whole congregation would vote on it. But that would be an assistant role, I believe. Anyone want to weigh in on that?
An assistant and not an associate and a session hire. But again, with the input of the congregation.
So when you say session hire, then it's just the search committee is done entirely by the session. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Lisa Fish.
My voice is mostly gone, so this might be hard. It seems like adding another significant staff position before having administrative functions or structure in place adds a level of complication or brings someone new into more chaotic environment. That is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering why the order. I see the need for, of course, the ministries, and I know like all the volunteers who are serving are doing so much more. But I also think there could be a concern in bringing in a new staff member if we don't have the administrative organizational structure
Yes.
to do that well.
Yes.
So is the reasoning just because we need the ministry to the children and families sooner, or?
Yeah. In short, I would say that's the basic reasoning. I mean, there was deliberation, about this. So it took some time for us to kind of be of the same mind about that, And you bring up a really good point. I think as we kind of stepped back and said, all right, what's kind of the urgent need? It would be for someone who could fill in that role and focus on families. I'll just say, I don't know if she's here. If she is, she probably wouldn't want me to embarrass her. But Stephanie Atkinson has taken on an enormous load. I mean, it's incredible how much she does for our church. If she were to, move out of town or something tomorrow, I'd be like, well, okay, so Faith Presbyterian Church closed in 2024, and it would grant relief a little bit sooner to her. She's one aspect of it, but a very real, a heavy load has fallen to her. So, yeah. So, and I would say we're kind of working on some things in the meantime, administratively, to kind of figure out, all right, how do we kind of patch things up until we can come up with a really good permanent solution. So, yes, Philip.
If the second hire is going to be done by the session anyway, is there any real reason why it needs to wait? Can they not do it at the same time?
Anyone want to weigh in on that? Any elders? Ed.
I was just going to say that a lot of these questions also play into the budget. We're going to be, this is going to be in addition to our annual budget if we were to eventually hire these two, which is our plan. But we need to ease into that with confidence in addition to, the building project. And so that's why the decision was made to let's prioritize the student and families pastor, because, that is a core piece that we know we need first, and then we hope to be able to add that second post as soon as it's wise to do so with our budget.
Yeah. That's good. David Mustard, have another question? Thanks, Ed.
On the basketball court. When we hired for your position, the search committee was given a very detailed priority list by the session. So is the session creating another very specific charge that, in this case, when we hire the replacement for Stephen's job, that the search committee will just execute as we did last time?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Yeah, we're taking feedback we've already sought feedback from the staff, feedback that will come from this meeting on Wednesday as well. We'll go into that. My input, the rest of the session's input, things like that.
So then will we get that charge, or whatever we want to call it? Will the elders give that out before we vote then?
Before we vote on what?
Before we vote on February 4th for who's going to serve
on the hiring
committee? Yeah.
I haven't thought of that. I don't know. We could. It's possible we could. We could entertain that. But honestly, it's just not something I've thought about. But can we chat about it? Because I'd like to hear your rationale for that. So yeah, thanks, David. Anyone else? Anyone getting hungry? We'll stay as late as we need. No? Okay. Oh, yes, Nathan.
Sort of a mixed comment question. Those of us like Ed who are on the building committee know that, God willing, a month from today, we'll start worshiping in our building again, even though there will still be a few finishing touches that will need to be put in. God willing, within 1 month, we'll be in that building. And my understanding is that soon thereafter, the capital fundraising campaign, for which we have hired a consultant to help us, will begin. So we'll be running a lot of channels at once. We will be talking about and raising interest in and praying about, searching our hearts for the capital fundraising campaign for phase 2. We'll also be adjusting to the new setup in the new space, and a committee will be put together to search for this new position, all while we're settling into the, hey, what does administration person either. So what direction can we take to say, all right, we're going to bear some of the load for 3, 4 months, 6 months. We know things are going to look different. Here are the specific ways that we can pick up things A and B so that the members of the search committee can focus on that while everyone is stepping into the capital campaign. Like, what does that look like for families in the church? What do we pick up to help all of this get executed at a time that looks like it's going to be wild and chaotic? And how can we do it without anxiety?
Ooh, well, focus on the kingdom. Let's close in prayer. No, that's a very good question, Nathan. Thank you. I would say, I mean, as I sort of scan the congregation, this is a portion of the congregation, I'm like, this is the 20% who's doing 80 to 90% of the work. You know, I mean, I look around and I know almost all of you, as far as I know, have things that you're doing at church to serve. That makes me very thankful and very grateful for you. If there are any of you who have some capacity, you have some gifts and they're maybe untapped and you would like to serve in other ways, then I would say reach out to folks on our staff. Reach out to Stephanie and say, hey, Stephanie, how can I serve you? Just give me like one thing. I'd be happy to do it. It could be a task. It could be something more long-term than that. But at the very least, I mean, that conveys an extraordinary amount of encouragement. Like, oh, you see me. You see what I'm doing. You see that what I'm doing is valuable, you know? So that's the first thing that comes to mind, you know? It's just kind of put yourself at the service of someone. I mean, we can all probably think of the workhorses at our church who just do so much. You know, folks like people, you know, whether on staff, people who are volunteering. I mean, volunteers, you who are volunteering and not on staff, I mean, you're really the lifeblood of the church. You are. And it's only possible for us to do the things that we're doing because of you. If you do find yourself you have some capacity, identify that person and say, hey, how can I serve? I think that would mean a lot right now. So, yeah. How about any more questions? I'm going to give it about 2 seconds and then I'll close this in prayer. Okay. If you want to talk more, I'll stick around, talk with our elders, deacon staff, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Father God, we ask for your guidance. We need your help in the big things like this, but also in the little things. We want you to be honored. We want you to be glorified. We do want your kingdom to be more and more visible in our church and in our community and in this world. Help us to do that well. Direct us as a congregation. As Nathan just mentioned, we have a lot of things going on right now. Help us to honor you in all of our steps, Lord Jesus. And we ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you.